With Gears of War 4, we wanted to earn your trust. But with Gears 5, we want to push the envelope by doing new things never seen in a Gears game before.
That's my biggest sort of excitement, is to see how people react to that. It's definitely a huge step forward. It's an evolution. It's not just a reproduction.
By now I think it's safe to say that despite whether you like or dislike Gears 5, the fact is the majority of the hardcore Gears fans just aren't that thrilled with the game, and the game's player base is dropping rapidly. If what I was saying was wrong, these videos wouldn't be doing well, and if the content within them wasn't truthful, then the like to dislike ratio would be much lower. But instead these videos are doing well, and they've all been well received. Now even though I try and keep these videos as level-headed as possible, I still get tons of comments or messages telling me how awful my opinion is, telling me to stop making these videos, or even have people really go out of their way to try and personally attack me, like this gentleman here. So let me just say again, as I have in every Gears video, that I make these for a good reason. I've loved this franchise ever since I first saw this couple of Gears of War 1 trailers, especially the stellar Mad World, which I know all of us Gears fans can still remember every second of by heart.
Worn out places, worn out faces.
I also still remember so vividly when I was a kid, having to pay my babysitter's boyfriend $5 just to play the game whenever she was watching me, because my parents thought the game was too violent and didn't like its language and gore. And I still remember saving up my weekly allowance for 7 weeks more than a decade ago, just so I could have an older friend buy the game for me. And I had to wake up every night and play the game while my parents were asleep. I loved the game that much. So trust me when I say I love this franchise and simply want to see it return to its former glory. After all, when I first saw the critic and YouTube reviews for Gears 5, I was hyped beyond belief, because it seemed like this game would be the best Gears yet, and I could finally convince my friends to give it a try, and they all either got the game or joined Game Pass to play it. And just like everyone else did, we all set our Xbox's location to New Zealand to play the game early. But after a week of playing, I realized this Gears was nothing like the old franchise that I'd fallen in love with. And my friends who all bought into the hype stopped playing just after a day or so, and have all stated they have no intention to play again, because there's just so many other better and more complete games to play. Now I've already done a general review of the game, as well as follow-up ones on the game's microtransactions, multiplayer, and why we need to criticize it. But for today's video, I want to address a game mode that's become a core pillar of the Gears franchise ever since Gears 2. And that's of course, the fan-favorite Horde mode. In past Gears games, Horde seems to be getting better and better with each entry. Even though Gears 4 suffered from a lack of interesting enemies, it still managed to add a couple good additions, such as different classes and passive upgrades. But here in Gears 5, the mode as a whole has changed for the worse, and still suffers from the same issue of enemy variety. So to properly see why this new version of Horde is disliked by most Gears fans, let's look into what Horde used to be and how this new class system has greatly ruined the experience. A lot of games nowadays all have wave-based modes, where a handful of players duke it out with AI. Halo has the infamous Firefight mode, which has actually done incredibly well in Halo Reach and ODST. Call of Duty has Survival mode, which is decent but a little bland. And Gears of War has Horde mode, which is probably one of the best versions of this mode, as for most game, a Horde mode is simply a checklist item. But in Gears of War, it's become a core pillar of the franchise, with tons of fans dedicated to just playing this mode. This all started in Gears of War 2, where when it was first announced it sounded cool, but no one thought it would be executed that damn well. In Gears 2 the mode was pretty simple, with just 50 waves of enemies that increased in diversity, quantity, and difficulty from waves 1 through 10. And then after every 10 waves, modifiers such as double enemy health and double accuracy would be added. Despite its simplicity though, it was extremely addicting, and the meta soon revolved around using the Mauler's shields to barricade off entrances, and then using mulchers to make quick work of anything that got in your way. Also, another feature that made this mode better than many other games like Firefight and Survival was the fact that Horde mode could be played on literally any map, meaning there was always a ton of locations to fight off the Locust on. Once Epic had seen just how much reviewers liked the mode and how popular it was with the community, they went all out with Gears 3. Now the game mode included the horrifying Lambent faction, added massive and fun bosses every 10 waves, with my personal favorite being the Brewmock. Actually scratch that. I still gotta love the Berserker with that iconic charging sound. and the mode took inspiration from defense games by allowing players to pick from multiple spots and set up bases where they could set up defenses and fortifications, and eventually even use the beloved Silverback for total locust annihilation. Then in Gears 4, bases were now mobile through the use of the Fabricator, and classes were added to the game, which allowed players to grind for tons of passive upgrades and bonuses. While not every player liked these additions, I think it's fair to say the majority of fans loved the new ability to set up camp anywhere on the map, and the RPG-light mechanics of upgrading a multitude of classes added another great reason to keep playing the mode for months after release. Then of Gears 5, everyone figured the mode would finally have more enemy diversity and evolve for the better once more. But instead, the mode has not just regressed, but has borderline been ruined. In Gears 5 Horde, there are some great additions. There are some bad additions, and there are some decisions, well, that flat out ruin the mode. So to start off, let's look at the good ones. There's finally some more enemy variety, with great additions such as the Warden, which reminds me a lot of the Brute Chieftains from Halo 3, and the Matriarch, which is a berserker that can now throw spikes into players, rip people in half, and jump around like the Hulk. Whoever designed these enemies deserves a raise. I'm also really glad that now reviving teammates at the Fabricator no longer costs power, that many boss waves have been included in between the 10-wave intervals, and the ability to skip ahead to the next wave and give players power are both welcome improvements. Sadly though, this is literally the end of changes made to Horde that I think only have positives. Some other changes made could be cool or add more to the gameplay if implemented correctly. It's great that skill cards for classes are no longer locked behind an RNG system, but now the amount of character cards available is minuscule even compared to Gears 4 at launch. The game also now has 8 difficulty levels, where in custom lobbies you can choose which modifiers to activate, which is great. But for public lobbies, the first difficulty adds a modifier that doesn't even allow you to retry a wave after you failed, and instead the match ends immediately. This is one of my least favorite changes by far, as in every other Gears game, we've always been allowed to retry a failed wave, which is crucial if you're trying to complete all 50 waves, and fail one out of a dumb mistake. Maybe you got caught out in the open, maybe one of your friends is in the bathroom, or maybe players got disconnected and you need to regroup. If any of these happen and it leads to a failed wave after dedicating hours to a mode, you shouldn't have to redo everything. I remember during the first week of the game's launch, when the servers were much worse than they are now, my friends and I managed to get to wave 39 or so without disconnecting, and then 2 of us, along with our random, disconnected in the middle of a round. Obviously that alone was frustrating, but once we resultantly failed the wave and realized we couldn't try again and maybe invite them back, I had zero incentive to play for the next couple of days. The next change that also sounds good on paper is the addition of the perk system and hero abilities. The perk system allows you to upgrade your character throughout the match, meaning along with enemies getting stronger, you get stronger as well. However, the system requires power to upgrade, which in turn causes a lot of players to become selfish with their power instead of depositing it into the Fabricator so the engineers can use it. Gears 4 had a much better system with all its passive class upgrades that could be obtained after playing the game enough. And I think most players would agree that having a character that you can upgrade permanently over time is much more fun than a temporary boost that discourages team play. The next issue of Horde is the introduction of hero characters, where players have 2 smaller abilities and 1 ultimate ability. However, I already knew this would be a gameplay gimmick made to appease to Overwatch, Destiny, and Division fans following the current trend. But I still wanted to give the game a fair shot, and figured if it was done right, it could be really interesting. Instead, this change may be the single worst aspect of the new Horde mode. I figured at first that these hero abilities would be locked to certain classes, but now instead they're locked to characters, and the Coalition thought for some reason it'd be a good idea to only allow 1 character per lobby. Not only does this ability go against the golden rule that most games have realized, which is to not make players choose between looking how you want and playing how you want, but now in lobbies, people either have to decide beforehand who gets to play as who, and if you go into a public lobby and you and someone else are both trying to play as the same person, the game flips a coin on who gets the character, and the loser has to play as someone random. I just can't think of a single positive reason to make this change. The next issue of Horde involves the enemy variety and additions. The newly added swarm leeches, which are basically constant heat-seeking missiles at players, are particularly annoying. And while I'm glad to see the Sire make a return to Horde, its inability to be chainsawed, along with it capturing and killing you without any way out, makes the mode frustrating in public matches with poor teammates, and a nightmare when playing with a small team. Here in Gears 5, I really did expect to be blown away with a lot more enemy variety compared to Gears 4. But instead the DBs are just as unfun to fight as they were in Gears 4. And while the Swarm got a couple new additions, some good and some bad, it's obvious that they are still very much a B-Team Locust faction, with a much smaller roster and a lot less character. However, there are ways to fix many of these issues. While Gears 5's Horde mode might sound like a lost cause, it can be fixed through updates and expansions. And if they want to keep some of these additions for the eventual Gears 6, then there are better ways to do so. First off, they need to add back the same number of classes that was there in Gears 4, and bring back the plethora of permanent upgrade cards. However, keep those free of an RNG system. Then if the new perk system, they could just add in another XP currency that works in parallel to how much power you get, but can only be spent on perks. That way power can be used to benefit the team, while XP points can be solely used to upgrade yourself. A win-win for both sides. Now in terms of character ultimate abilities, those can stay in the game. The abilities themselves aren't bad, but the Coalition needs to unlink them from characters and not limit how many characters/classes can be in one lobby. If players want to play as a team of 5 Marcuses or 5 Cog Gears, let them do it. If they want to all play as medics or as all engineers, let them do it. And for the love of all things good, don't limit fortifications to only the engineer class, as it greatly limits the options of play for other classes. And in the harder waves, fortifications are a necessity to win. By doing this change, players can look how they want, play how they want, and still use every weapon and every fortification. Classes should add benefits to certain weapons and playstyles, not separate them. In terms of enemy variety, I do understand some players do generally enjoy the DBs and the Swarm. So to not take away anything from those players, why not just add back the same Locust and Lambent enemies from Gears of War 3? This would add double the factions and dramatically improve the enemy variety in Horde. I can't be the only one that misses a Lambent Berserker, the grinder saying grind. Or the Cantus yelling and screaming. Horde mode doesn't have to align with the story's timeline, and for many of us Gears fans, our fondest memories involve many of the Locust enemies. So by bringing these guys back, not only would the gameplay improve, but it could also serve as some great nostalgia for the fans of the old games. Moreover, it's no secret that many Horde fans also don't enjoy the new maps. As for Horde gameplay, they're all incredibly small and obviously built around verses. But as I've stated before, with Gears 4 and 5 running on the same engine, just port over the remastered maps from Gears 4. Not only did that game have its own great maps, but it even remastered fan favorites like Blood Drive, Gridlock, Hotel, War Machine, and so many others. Those maps were great for versus, but also amazing for Horde. Also, last couple things, come on the Coalition, bring back our Silverback, bring back the manual turret fortifications, and bring back some of those missing weapons like the Scorcher, One Shot, and of course the Hammer of Dawn. By doing this, not only could Horde mode improve dramatically, but the Coalition could also prove to fans that Gears of War is returning to its former glory. Gears 5 has a laundry list of issues, some creative and some technical. While the game is already suffering from a lack of content at launch, a loss of its identity, a confusing and flawed versus, a terrible microtransaction system, the introduction of lackluster game modes, and so much more, one core pillar of the game that many fans hoped would at least serve as an anchor of comfort and fun amongst this flawed product was Horde mode. Yet here in Gears 5, even Horde mode has changed for the worse. But like I stated, there are ways to fix this, and help the game return to its former glory. The Coalition has done good recently as well in addressing the state of the game, vowing to fix many multiplayer issues, talking and communicating more with fans, and even acknowledging how it looked disrespectful to fans when they mocked a guy on stream for simply asking about microtransactions in a $60 game. However, just like the real world, sometimes all you get are first impressions. And with Gears 5 making an awful first impression, I don't know if many players would return to the game, or if it can generate enough excitement years later to warrant a proper revival. I truly hope Gears 5 can eventually become the game it was always meant to be. 343 Industries messed up dramatically with Halo 5, and since then they've had a long and hard battle earning back the trust of fans, and in course correcting the series to resemble the older games. Now it looks like the Coalition is in the exact same boat, and it's up to them to either listen to fans and fix the franchise, or to continue down the current path of alienating the old fans and adding weight to an already sinking ship. Addressing the issues I stated about Horde mode and making some of the changes I suggested could be a good start to making Gears feel like Gears again. Well, that wraps up this video on the issues of Horde mode and why it's the worst rendition yet. So let me know what you think down in the comments, and as always my Twitter account and Patreon are linked down below. And this video is made in part thanks to the generous support from Kruse. With that said, let's chat down in the comments, and if you like this video and want to see more like it, be sure to leave a like, share the video, and hit that subscribe button. And I'll see you all on the next Shepherd Gaming video. Keyless Ally.